on some issue, and you know which one I'm referring to, in which a small group feels strongly in opposition, the majority have no strong feelings one way or the other, but rather bend and sit silently. And I'm sure that that is also true, though you would know better than I, at the undergraduate level, where a small pressure group will take a stand, and for fear of being out of line, a fear of looking silly, a fear of any number of things, the defenders are rather few in number so far as speaking out is concerned. Let me say a few things about the unit then in the period of the 1970s. It was a tough period. Commander Holland will remember some of the incidents, the attempt to interfere with the drill that was going on Deering Meadow, and the final abandonment of that open, visible sign. The commissioning of the midshipmen had traditionally taken place at commencement, along with all the other degree recipients. And in May, or rather June of 1969, 2 or 3 days before the commissioning, President Miller informed the PNS, who was Colonel Baylor Gibson, whom some of you know, and Baylor Gibson was one of the great heroes of the period of defending the unit on campus. We'd better not have commissioning at graduation for fear of disruption. And so at the last minute, it was decided to have a separate commissioning. It was my idea that we take Lutkin Hall, partly because it was small in size, but more important, it was defensible. There were only a few doors in which people could get in or get out. But the Lord works in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform, because I think in the long run, the separate commissioning, which has been in effect since 1969, is much more valuable than a few white uniforms being lost in a sea of caps and gowns up in Welsh Ryan or McGaw, whatever you want to call it now. The headquarters of the unit in 1969 were in the basement of Lunt Hall. We had inherited the quarters from the Air Force ROTC, and immediately it was decided that this was too dangerous. There's certain irony in all of this. Lunt Hall also houses the Department of Mathematics, and two of the most active faculty people against the unit were in the Department of Mathematics. And the argument was, we have to get the unit out of Lunt for fear that the building might be burned down. And the only people who were really interested in burning down the building for that purpose were two members of the Department of Mathematics. But in any case, for a short time, the unit was exiled, I suppose is the best word, to some fairly luxurious quarters up at Dyke Stadium that the athletic department immediately wanted to get hold of. But however luxurious, it was a hell of a situation to ask any midshipman to walk, ride, bicycle, take a bus up to Dyke Stadium simply to consult with his class advisor. That situation, however, remained from 1970 until into Captain Koski's period, I'd say about 77. As chairman of the Committee on the Department of Naval Science, I wrote annually to the President, how about moving the unit back closer to the campus? And annually the President said, I'd love to, can you find me any space? And you know, nature abhors a vacuum, and space is always at a premium in an academic institution. And I can remember one conversation with President Strotz on this matter, in which he said, you know, I think I've really found some space for you. And my eyes lit up. I said, fine, where is it? He said, what would you think of putting the unit in the basement of Millard Chapel? And I thought that was carrying muscular Christianity just a little too far, and I said, let's wait a little while and get something more appropriate. And fortunately, by 1977, I think I'm right on that, the present house on Haven Street became available. But there were certain changes in this post-war period. There was no drilling on Deering Meadow. The midshipmen, I think, this was after Commander Holland's day, went through a sort of identity crisis. They were reluctant to wear the uniforms. They didn't want to participate actively as midshipmen. And I guess I'd have to say the quality of the midshipmen, as well as the numbers, diminished in that period. Now I want to come back and say something I hadn't said before, because it's something I'd like you to think about. What sort of Northwestern undergraduate joined the NROTC? My study of the period of the 1930s indicates that some of the ablest people on campus were members of the NROTC. If you look through the old yearbooks, where they have a section sort of big men on campus, you can find a large number of midshipmen. And let me give you one example of an outstanding person of that period, which tells you something. There was a person by the name of Charles F. Barber in the class of 1939. The yearbook said he was the Fred Astaire look-alike, and indeed the picture at that time shows he looked pretty much like Fred Astaire without Ginger Rogers. He won a Rhodes Scholarship, graduated in '39, won a Rhodes Scholarship. But because of the outbreak of the Second World War, Oxford was not taking Rhodes Scholars from the United States. So he then went to Harvard Law School for a couple of years and then was called to active duty. 4 years beyond his commissioning, he found himself as the flag lieutenant of Admiral Raymond A. Spruance. Now, I suspect the name of Spruance is not familiar to the midshipmen today, but Spruance was one of the heroes of the Battle of Midway when he had to take over the carrier task force when Admiral Halsey came down with shingles. He was also the person who, along with Halsey, were the two fleet admirals, the Third Fleet and the Fifth Fleet, which waged the Central Pacific War. So this man, Charles Barber, 4 years out of his midshipman experience at Northwestern, was in the center of writing all of the operation plans, distributing for those very complex operations in the Pacific. In the period of the 50s, and I had occasion to remind the readers of the Daily Northwestern of this fact a year or so ago. The unit at that time, and I'm doing this from memory, in that period had 2 captains of the football team. 3 times a midshipman was editor of the Daily Northwestern. 3 times a midshipman was president of the student body. And just to show how ecumenical and even-handed the unit could be, in 1960, in the presidential election between Nixon and Kennedy, one midshipman was president of the Young Republicans and another was president of the Young Democrats. Now, I give you this evidence because I wonder whether today we can say that the midshipman body are as active on campus as they were in that earlier period. Now, I'm ignorant. I don't know you people, and I haven't known the people in the recent classes except in few numbers. But I think it's something to ask ourselves, and if the answer is there is a change, why? And that's the sort of thing I hope maybe we can talk about when I finish up in a few seconds now.